Welcome to this episode of YouTube, where I've entitled it How Far We've Come. And certainly, if you may have received the posting, the Wolf Center is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and that is 26 years of captive wolves for us here. And we thought we'd share with you kind of some opportunities to look back at where we've been and look forward to where we're headed. And certainly, we are always monitoring the needs of the wolves and working on projects to enhance their lives. This was a pile of sand that's going to help fill some holes, give them some cool places to lie down in some of the summer heat, and certainly gives them a lot of fun while they investigate the pile. And we do see a fair amount of guarding behavior and certainly a lot of possessive behavior on who gets to be on top of the pile. We're very thrilled to see Bolt's excited and lying on top of the pile since he's been having so many issues with intimidation from the buzzing flies and bees this summer. So it's kind of fun to watch him take the lead on the pile and to chase off Denali. And certainly Luna is an active investigator. Luna's got more predatory drive than any of the wolves here, and so that's kind of a fun thing to see. Now, we do need some of this sand, so we certainly don't want them to spread it all throughout the exhibit, but it is, a good opportunity for them to interact and have a good time on it. So that's one of the things that is part of our ongoing projects here, is we're constantly filling in holes, trying to make sure that the wolves have comfortable places for resting and that their safety and security is number one. So I thought I'd start with, again, where we came from. In 1989, we had an exhibit here that is a portion of what we have now, a very small portion of what we have now. And these wolves were in a situation where they were seasonal, meaning they came to the center in May, Memorial Day weekend, and they left in September on Labor Day weekend. So they were just kind of a seasonal exhibit. We didn't have a secondary fence to protect them. So we had myself as the curator spent the night here to make sure that they were safe and sound throughout the night, and staff, I was a tree planter at that time, so I would go plant trees during the day, staff would be doing educational programs, and then I would come back at night and guard the exhibit. And so that exhibit, like I say, was very small, but the wolves were very active, and so we still see part of the main den was this actual enclosure at that time. So we had originally in 1989 4 wolves that were part of this exhibit, and in 1990 3 of the wolves actually came back to the exhibit. We had placed Raisa, one of the original 1989 litter, to another facility in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Raisa and Basha were the 2 females that I had at that time, and neither one of them wanted to give up dominance, and so we found a better place for Raisa that she allowed to be a dominant pack member, while Basha also was allowed to be the dominant female on our exhibit. So that was the 89 exhibit, and like I said, in the off season, they came to live with me, and so their enclosure was quite a bit different in the wintertime. It was larger by acres larger. It was quiet. There was not a lot of traffic. There were really very limited numbers of people that came to my house. There were some Wolf Center programs that were ongoing, but for the most part, it was just a peaceful existence that the wolves had. So as you can imagine, every year that they came back to the center was, definitely more of an issue for those particular wolves. So the 1989 litter did not continue with us at the center after we started the exhibit in 1993. Now, one thing I also is kind of a pattern that we had is when I have a dog, that dog needs to be around those wolves. We include the dog in the socialization process. And this is a picture of Maggie, my German Shepherd, with the 3 wolves. And we found that the dog could actually help kind of calm the pack and to help them deal with life in a captive environment. Notice the difference between the wolves and the dogs. Dogs have a curly tail, wolves have a straight tail. Even though Maggie was a German Shepherd, she was not a wolf. She was a dog who was raised with wolves and certainly displayed dominance over those wolves. But One thing that we found over the years is that dominance can be tested when the wolves are older. So we are always very clear on how the dog interacted with the wolves once they reached maturity. So then, like I said, in 1993, when the center opened full time, we decided that it was best to bring in a new litter. Certainly, the 1989 litter did not really see this as a positive place, so we wanted to have a positive association for the pups that came, and that was Mackenzie, Lucas, Lakota, and Kiana were born in 1993. And a lot of educational opportunities existed with these 4 members of the 1993 litter. And so when we started doing educational programs, we found that the 4 littermates that lived together kind of worked out a lot of their rank order issues as puppies. And so they got to the point as they got older that they didn't necessarily have as much dominance and rank hierarchy and dynamic interactions as they got older. So in the year 1999, we had decided that we needed to probably add a little life to the exhibit. These guys were aging, and when wolves age, by the time they're 6 or 7 years of age, that's well into middle age for most wolves. Obviously, captive wolves can live a little bit longer, but in our experience, we find by the time they're 7 or 8, we certainly are seeing a decline. So in the year 2000, we brought Shadow and Malik into the exhibit. Now, one thing you'll notice here from this shot, we do not have a garage. So in the year 2000, we did not have a place to raise puppies. So Shadow and Malik were raised off-site, and they came to us at about 6 weeks of age. Well, what ended up happening, we found, was that the prolactin hormone wasn't as stimulating to the adult wolves because the pups were a little bit older. The other thing that we noticed is that you'll see in this clip here, Shadow gives kind of a little threat display towards the adult wolves, and that was a little concerning, although the adult wolves did accept them. And here is Shadow Malik showing some greeting behavior towards Mackenzie, and Mackenzie is obviously very associative with them, grabbing them, pulling them into her with her forepaws, and certainly greeting. So even though there was a little bit of association there with Mackenzie and the pups, by the time the Arctics reached about 2, they actually did retire out the entire 1993 litter. So that was an interesting dynamics there. But as I said, we always try to improve the lives of our captive wolves. In the year 2001, we built the pond, and that's the current pond that we are actually fundraising for to help some algae filtration issues. And when it first arrived, it was certainly a benefit to the wolves. The fact that they could swim and they could be chest deep in water to help cool them off was a real bonus for them. And so that was built, as I said, in the fall of 2001 when Mackenzie, Lucas, and Lakota were 6, and Shadow Malik had just turned 1 year of age as yearlings. Another thing that we did was improve the pack holding area. That was Shadow in a timeout for doing a little dominance over the 1993 litter. And then we built the retired pack, and that was in the year 2002. And there again, there's another dog. That's my dog Jake. And Jake was a shepherd greyhound cross, kind of a long, lanky thing. And he was not allowed to go in with the wolves, but obviously could socialize through the fence. And again, in retirement, we didn't have a pond right away. We had a tub, but then eventually we built a pond. The pond became something that all the retirees after the 1993 litter were able to enjoy. The other thing in the 93 litter, they had just den boxes, meaning wood boxes that were actually served okay for them, but we all know Shadow Malik had much better accommodations with a concrete rock den that allowed them both to lay on top of the den. In the year 2004, we had the garage. So that was the first year that we had built the garage for the 2004 pups. And so you'll see this is Grizzer, Maya, and Nisa investigating what was a fairly sterile environment at that time. Not much brand new garage, basically some straw and some work. You'll also notice as the time they got to be into the enclosure at about 3 months of age, vegetation had picked up around the pond. So we certainly saw more vegetation than we saw in 2001 when that pond was first built. So we spent a lot of time trying to seed and plant so that there was a little bit more cover around the pond. And so that's Nisa and Maya there on the greeting rock, and that greeting rock is a popular place for our wolves, and hope to, in the upcoming enclosure improvements, hope to add quite a few more of those before the next set of pups come. And then in 2008, Aiden and Denali had a better environment in the lab. We had a more natural environment, and we also had running water. That was an addition that came in 2007, so that we actually had water in the lab that allowed for us to obviously take care of the pups in a better capacity, both in cleanliness but also in preparing food and making sure that we could steam clean and sterilize the areas where the pups had been. So that was a real bonus in the 2008 litter. And then when we came to, again, the placement of the 2008 litter into the exhibit pack, you'll see a change in that we had hauled a lot of rock. And so instead of just bare concrete, there was more rock in the adjacent to the pond, and that allowed us to, again, do more vegetative planting. It allowed us to certainly improve the overall in exploration for the pups, places for frogs and toads, amphibians to be active throughout the pond. And so that was an improvement that we did with the 2008 litter. So every litter, we tried to, again, improve the condition of the pups previously, that they experienced previously. Well, in 2012, we kind of went a little bit backwards, because in 2012, with Luna having a fracture and having a repair to her back right femur, she was not allowed to roughhouse with bolts, and so she had to have special blankets. She had to have a staff person with her at all times to make sure she was well protected in those first weeks after her surgery. So that meant that they had a different environment, certainly not a large area for Luna, because they wanted her to remain relatively immobile. The other thing that happened was by 2012, Grizzer was in retirement, Cheto Malik were in retirement. We didn't have any space for the pups to be in what we call the pack holding area, the area that's got a little bit more vegetative cover, so they kind of hang out in the yard and didn't get a lot of that exposure to the vegetation and greenery and certainly natural world that all the other litters had received. And so that was something quite different for the 2012 litter. They actually got into the pack holding area for about a week before the introduction, and that was it. So every litter, again, we always want to strive from learning from what happened in the past and trying to improve the lives of the ambassador wolves as we move forward. And so we learned a lot, and it's like I say, it's been 26 years for me as a wolf curator here, and every litter is different, every individual personality is different. Certainly every litter had its moments and every litter had its challenges, and that's why at this point with the CrowdRise fundraiser, we're really hoping to, again, improve the condition, learn from the past and learn from the experiences that we've had, and as we go forward in the future, try to make our ambassador lives the most comfortable that they can be. So that's kind of what I have for YouTube this week. I thought I would end with some great news. Grizzer is now back up to 122 pounds. So if you recall, early in the summer we were concerned he was dropped down to 111 pounds. This is the weight scale. Actually, it's a pig scale that we haul out into the enclosure, and this is Grizzer standing patiently getting weighed. In the new enclosure design, or the new building design, we actually want to build into the building a scale, so we don't have to have a scale that's hauled outside. Obviously, that'll be more accurate if it's not dragged outside. And like I said, we've learned from the past, and Grizzer does still miss Oscar. Oscar was here in 2012, and he's now since become a farm dog and enjoying life on a farm. So Grizzer in 2015 here now has Tina. Tina's a poor substitute for Oscar because Oscar was a lot more engaging, but as Grizzer ages, maybe Tina's kind of more mellow personality might be better for that aging wolf exhibit. But Tina will be the dog who's probably going to help with the 2016 pups. So that's it from Wolf Care this week. Again, Grizzer's just so happy to see him back feeling good and picking up on that weight that he lost over the past winter. So that's it. And we'll see you next week.